We are a group of crop farmers, livestock farmers and researchers who decided to do a field trip between Ouagadougou and Tamale. The aim of the trip was to look at new technologies and to evaluate some of the technologies that the researchers were developing. The farmers also wanted a chance to investigate some of the things that interested them. This film has 4 parts, and the first part is about experiments. This is biochar. It's a type of charcoal that can be put into soil to make crops grow better. This is Shani, a vegetable farmer who showed us how to make biochar. Shani and the researchers had been experimenting on biochar in his farm. Shani showed us 2 ways to make biochar. First, he showed us how to make biochar with a pyramid-shaped stove and rice bran. The fire is set inside of the stove. This stove could be operated by 1 person, but they needed to be turning the rice bran most of the time. Eventually, the rice bran turns to biochar. He also showed us how to make biochar with a big stove made out of a barrel. This stove needed 2 people to operate it. It could make a smaller quantity of biochar out of the rice bran, and it took longer to produce that biochar. However, the barrel stove could make biochar out of many different materials, and then it made a larger quantity of biochar. Shani said that the biochar improved the yield and the quality of his lettuce, but the Ouaga farmers were sceptical that it would work on their soils and said that they would have to do some experiments on site. Experimentation also came in when we were buying new products. The cabbage farmers from Tamale were particularly interested in buying new seeds of cabbage from Ouagadougou in order to try them out in different seasons. But experimentation is risky, especially when it involves money, so they limited their purchases to the cabbage seeds that they already knew, rather than any new crops. One of the livestock farmers, Afababa, saw an animal feed in Ouagadougou that he had experimented with at home in Tamale and knew was good. So, in 2 of the places we visited in Ouagadougou, he tried to get contacts to the people who produced and supplied this feed so he could import it to Tamale. So, it can be useful to try new things. But we only want to try new things when it's directly related to our job. We prefer not to try totally new or risky things. That's why we prefer to try things that other people have already done and seem to succeed. This also helps us to learn what will not work, and that's what the next part of the film is about. We went to see a drip irrigation experiment. River water was being pumped through a filter and along some pipes up to a storage tank. From there, it flowed through drip irrigation pipes and was used to irrigate crops like cabbage, okra and ayoyo. But because there wasn't always enough water in the stream, the water pressure was low and the system wasn't always working. We also saw some things that worked less well when we went to the processing side. We visited a charcuterie in Ouagadougou where they processed meat into sausages and terrines. We were really impressed about how focused the staff were and how everybody had a specific job to do. However, some of us thought the plant could be modified to meet a bigger market. In particular, this was to do with how they were making both beef and pork products. Every day, they processed the pork after the beef, and they did clean the machinery in between. But because they used the same machinery for both the pork and the beef, it wasn't halal, so Muslims couldn't eat the products, and some of us thought that this was a section of the market that they were missing out on. In Tamale, the researchers had been doing an experiment with biochar to see how it affected crops. At the time we visited, they were growing carrots. The main comment of the Ouagadougou farmers was that the carrots were planted too close together. If it had been a commercial field, the carrots would have been spaced further apart. Because of that, the farmers couldn't really tell how the biochar would work in real life. This means that there's a step between experimentation and practice. We learn through experimentation, and the penultimate section of this film is about teaching and learning. We went to a vegetable farming site by a reservoir in Bulmiagu in Ouagadougou. Here, the Ouagadougou farmers showed the Tamale people the crops that they grew. Some of these were new to the Tamale people, like the strawberries. The Tamale farmers were keen to learn how to reproduce the strawberries, but they thought that it would be hard to get the planting materials to Tamale because strawberries go by runners, not by seeds. The Tamale farmers were keener to teach the Ouagadougou people about the crops that they were already familiar with. They advised the Ouagadougou farmers to make wider cabbage beds and to space the cabbages out more within them for better ventilation. We went to Ouagadougou, where people were pumping water from a reservoir in order to irrigate their vegetables in a furrow irrigation system. The Ouagadougou farmers had a lot of advice for the farmers here about how to make their furrows straight so as to conserve water. People like teaching as part of their job because they feel proud about it and have interest in it. Teaching and learning are actually reciprocal and complementary processes that take place as part of sharing, exchange and conversation in the course of work. The last part of this film is about making business connections, which is a very important part of agriculture. For example, we met these tractor traders at Tamale Trade Fair. In fact, throughout the whole trip, we exchanged a lot of contacts and business cards. Business contacts are very important for supplies and inputs. This farmer had got in contact with international suppliers for the tools he used to inseminate his cows. One farmer, Salman, was very interested in the moringa plantation of the Lale Naba, a chief we met in Ouagadougou.
Even though if I implement it and the seeds...
Salman had started growing moringa at home in Tamale and was now very keen to sell the seeds to the Lale Naba.
Business. So I'll find ways and means so that we shall link each other. I can also be providing the seed.
We visited a farmer, Botongna, in Tamale, who was keeping small ruminants. Botongna emphasized how he wanted to be a big businessman. It's sometimes difficult for farmers like this to place themselves in the economy. Although Botongna wanted to be an independent businessman, he also wanted assistance from the government for some of his facilities, such as water collection. Business, like production, involves a bit of trial and error. We connect to peers who are in the same line of business, and we do need to engage with other people for procurement and marketing, as well as for technical exchanges. We need to have some kind of idea that a contact will be beneficial, but we're also willing to take most chances that we get to meet people. These are some of the experiences we had on our visit between Tamale and Ouagadougou. We hope to use them to benefit us in the future.